Welcome to the Veterinary Blueprint Podcast, brought to you by Butler Vet Insurance, hosted by Bill Butler. The Veterinary Blueprint Podcast is for veterinarians and practice managers who are looking to learn about working on their practice instead of in their practice. Each episode, we will bring you successful, proven blueprints from others both inside and outside the veterinary industry. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome to this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints Podcast. My name is Bill Butler. I am your host. And as always, we're coming to you bringing entrepreneurial and business mindset to veterinary practices across this great country of ours. And I say that because, very interestingly enough, on this episode of the podcast, I'm at somebody else's podcast studio recording this episode. I am down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee at Family Pet Health. And we are recording a podcast in somebody else's podcast studio. I am here with Michael Shirley, and he is the Chief Empowerment Officer at Family Pet Health, which is a family business. We connected. His brother actually reached out, which is an interesting story we'll get into, and said, hey, you should have my brother in your podcast. And a phone call was made, and I was going to be in Nashville at this time, and I bought donuts for the team, and here I am.
Hey, we appreciate it. We work cheap.
$34 for donuts. It was a pretty good deal. Well, thanks for having me in your studio. This is very cool that we're able to get this here. We're using my camera and your setup here. And it's great to be doing this with somebody else who's kind of on the same journey in a different industry and like-minded stuff. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, why don't we start with this? We were getting to know each other a little bit, and I said, "How did you get into this?" And you're telling I said, you taught school. You're a school teacher before you got into this whole animal health space.
That's right. So my journey, like many listeners that you have, probably started with 4-H. I was in the fourth grade. I remember when 4-H came to my school and they brought all these different project books, projects that you could participate in. And I gravitated instantly towards all of the animal projects. I went home and told my mom all about the horses and the pigs, and I can raise a cow and they have chickens. And she says, whoa, we can't do any of that because we live in the middle of town in the neighborhood. Yeah. So
you said you live in town,
right?
You weren't on a farm. You didn't grow up on a farm.
Did not grow up on a farm. Our house was in a neighborhood that backed up to a horse farm. So a very long story short is that she did allow me to get a 4-H pony. I got a pony in the fourth grade. I started taking riding lessons, but it came with a requirement that I went to work. So I was 11 years old and I started working in our family's grocery store.
Okay.
So 11 years old, I had I literally stood on a milk crate so that I could bag groceries for people.
Wow.
And so I started working my Social Security. They send you your statement, right? And it goes back to 1990. Yeah. So, and that's when I first started paying Social Security tax. And so it's kind of interesting. I grew up in a family business. Our current veterinary practice is 7 miles from where my great grandfather had his first grocery store.
Wow.
And I have a letter down in one of our exam rooms that he wrote in 1930 to his clients explaining why he wasn't extending credit anymore. And it was because of dry weather and chain corporate grocery stores.
Wow.
And now 100 years later, his great grandson is dealing with the same corporate influence in his industry.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned family. And so part of what happened on this journey, your brother, who also works in the practice here, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, basically sent me a LinkedIn message at like 8:00 on a Sunday night and said, hey, you should interview my brother in your podcast. That was basically what the message was.
Okay.
And I said, okay, sounds great. And so you and I connected on a phone call because you have your own podcast, and we'll put that in the show notes, but we'll describe your podcast.
So we have the Family Pet Podcast. It's a podcast for curious pet parents where we believe the more you know about pet healthcare, the better pet parent you can be.
And you started
I've said that a few times, right?
You've said that a few times. And so you started that as a way to create some content for your practice. And
the main purpose of the Family Pet Podcast was for us to create evergreen content that we could put on our website and share with backlinks. So it's on everywhere where you listen to podcasts, and they all link back to our website. So it helps with SEO. But the main reason was education is one of our core values. And it's really hard to have an in-depth conversation with someone about heartworm prevention in your regular appointment. Right? Because it just takes a lot of education. Why does your cat need heartworm prevention?
Sure.
And so we just decided that we were going to make podcast episodes for our most common asked questions and the 11 most common conversations in an exam room.
So that was how it all started.
And that was 96 episodes ago.
96 episodes ago.
Yep.
And so your brother reached out and said, hey, you should have my brother Michael. Your brother Steven reached out to me, and we had a phone call, and I just happened to be in the Nashville area. And I used to be stationed close by at Fort Campbell, so I know the area a little bit. I said, well, I'm going to be very close. Why don't we just come do it? You guys are doing podcasts. Let's do it at your place.
Yeah.
And so here we are. It's interesting to talk about the family dynamic. So your wife is the veterinarian.
Correct.
And your brother came to, a little backstory, your brother came to join for 6 weeks as a marketing person because he's got a marketing background or going to school.
His whole reason that he came, as I mentioned, I am a school teacher by training. So I was finishing up my teaching contract and I needed help. I needed him to come. We had someone that was leaving our practice, and we had an opening, and I really wasn't looking to hire somebody. I was like, I will fill that role when school lets out. I needed somebody to answer the phones for 6 weeks. So I called Steven because he was in school, like working on his master's. And I said, hey, can you come
master's in marketing?
Yes, marketing communication. And I said, will you come and answer the phones at the vet office for 6 weeks? And he said, I don't know anything about veterinary medicine. And I said, that doesn't matter. You know people. And that's what I need. And I said, we'll teach you the rest. And that was 6 years ago. I don't know. I guess it was 5.5 years ago. So no one is more shocked than our mother.
Really?
Growing up, we could not be in the same room together. We fought so much. And it wasn't until he left the house and went to college that we finally, I think absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, that's when he finally became a cool big brother because he was in college and he would take me up there to spend the night in the dorm room. I thought that was really cool. Right. But at any rate, it's worked out really well. I mean, he manages our operations and allowed me to not, like on your podcast, it says to help veterinarians work on their business rather than in their business.
Correct.
Adding the right people on our team has allowed me to work on the business rather than in the business.
And we'll get there in just a little bit because I do have some questions on this, but the family dynamic. So your family has had family business for a long time. You said back to the 30s.
Yeah, even earlier than that.
Than that. Mm-hmm. And we had a family business. So my parents are involved in the insurance agency. And I was just at some mastermind meetings, which is very similar to veterinary practice or veterinary management group and well-managed practice group. I participate in that in the insurance industry, trying to work on my business instead of in my business. And there's a lot of family dynamic. There's a husband and wife there. And what's interesting about the family dynamic is while it can be difficult at times, I think is probably a polite way to say some of the things that happen with family business is it can be difficult, but also you have an ally there that will probably do a little bit more for you than somebody else. Not saying you don't have good team members.
When it works well, it works well.
Correct.
When it doesn't work well, it's a disaster.
Yep.
And so there were many people that in our interview processes would express reservations about working for a husband and wife team. And then you throw in the brother too. Like we're very cognizant of the appearance of nepotism, right? Or something like that. I didn't know that everybody didn't have a family business, right? Because as I mentioned, like I started in the 4th grade working at the family business. And I remember when an interesting story is that I wanted to be a veterinarian and I started job shadowing in junior high school. The day I turned 18, I went to work for Dr. David Harris and I worked there for over a year. And then my father slipped at the grocery store and ruptured a disc in his back.
Okay. They
called me up. You got to come back to the family business. So I quit at Dr. Harris's office. They hired my wife to replace me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that experience, like going back to the grocery store as a manager, coming in when I had been gone for a while, my dad sat down and talked to me and said, hey, I don't like you're coming in as a manager. One of the lessons he taught me was don't ever ask the people that are working here to do things that they haven't seen you do.
Correct.
He goes, the pressure is going to be higher on you because you are my son.
Sure.
And people are going to think that you only got this job because you're my son, or that you don't have to do things like if you ask them to do something and they haven't seen you do it, they're going to think that you're just putting it off on them. So make sure that they know that you'll do the job that you're asking them to do. Those types of lessons stuck with me forever.
Yeah.
Stephen had those same lessons. We grew up in the same business, right? When he came in, I knew that he would understand how to handle customer complaints and deal with those things. Because if people liked the way I did things, they would like the way he did things too, because we were taught by the same people and forged in the same fire, I guess, as you might say.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of the Veterinary Blueprint Podcast is sponsored by Butler Vet Insurance. Being an insurance agent at Butler Vet Insurance, I've seen firsthand the difficulties veterinarians face insuring their practices. But do you know that we wrote the book on veterinary insurance? It's called Protecting Your Veterinary Practice: Insider Insurance Secrets Every Veterinarian Must Know. It's not just a book, it's a comprehensive guide that speaks to the unique challenges and insurance solutions for the veterinary community. With over 20 years experience from cyber liability to business auto and workers' compensation, our aim at Butler Vet Insurance is to reduce the stress of insurance for those dedicated to animal care. If you're a veterinary practice owner or manager and looking for some guidance on your insurance, follow our insurance blueprint. Discover the Butler Vet Insurance difference. And together, let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. Butler Vet Insurance, reducing the stress of insurance. It was interesting also because he gave me a quick tour of the practice, and beautiful new practice that just got built last June. And wanted to touch on that a little bit later in the podcast. But what's interesting is when he left us to get this podcast rolling, he stepped into the call center because he's working on stuff in the call center here at the practice. Why don't you talk about the history of so your wife replaced you at the practice where you were working with Dr. Harris. What was kind of the journey for her to launch her practice and the history of the family practice you have now?
Amy graduated from University of Tennessee. 2 weeks later, we got married. And 2 weeks after we got back from our honeymoon, Dr. Harris lined up an interview for her at another practice in town, because back in 2005, it was hard to find a job.
Sure.
So she went and interviewed at another practice here and came home, and I was like, how was it? She goes, that was amazing. It was like the most beautiful practice I've ever been in. The way it was designed, the people do they have zones, and it's just amazing. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? She goes, well, they're not hiring. And I said, well, tell them you'll work for free. She goes, what? I said, well, we don't have any bills really to speak of at the moment. I had a job, and I said, let's just tell them you'll work for free while you continue to interview, and we'll figure this out. So she told them that, and they did pay her. It was like an internship type of a deal. But a long story short is that within 6 months or 7 months from that time, she became an associate there, and she stayed there for 10 years. And we had 2 kids, we had, all the life stuff. I mean, we were very far along in our marriage, right? And things are going great. And things at the office there, she decided that it was time to leave, and she had a non-compete. And so she honored that. And so she had to work outside of Murfreesboro for 2 years.
Okay.
So she started traveling all around to different vet hospitals. And about a year and a half into that journey of relief vet med, she had worked in almost 25 different hospitals. So she was at one hospital for 10 years, and then in a year and a half worked in almost 25 other hospitals.
And so she worked at a practice that she started working for essentially free intern money, but it was the right opportunity.
Correct.
And it was the right environment to learn vet med out of school. And then the complete opposite exposure of seeing 25 different ways on how to do things, good and bad. I'm sure the spectrum, right?
For sure.
and so to me, seeing the practice that you've built here gives me insight into the story about how this building and how this practice came to be.
Right.
It's painting a picture of an aggregate of all the best things at a lot of places and all the worst things a lot of places. And the worst things aren't here, hopefully.
We hope not.
Hope not.
Right.
At least from the structure, the physical structure perspective. And
the only reason the physical structure exists is because we put the right people in the practice to begin with. And when she came home a year and a half into that relief time and said, I think I want to open my own practice, Bill, I couldn't have been more shocked.
Really?
I was on the couch, and at first I remember where I was sitting, where my feet were.
It was a moment in time.
It has burned in my head where she was in the door, leaning against the door frame. And I was shocked. And then I jumped up and I gave her a high five and I said, "You're going to do great. I know you're going to do amazing because you're an amazing doctor. This is awesome. What do you need from me?" And she said, "I don't know." And we started to push on that a little bit. And I said, "Why do you want to start your own practice? You have never talked about ownership ever before. Why now?"
So you come from a family of entrepreneurs.
Correct.
So grocery store owners, and,
Correct.
I mean, that's entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
small business owner entrepreneurship. So you know what that looks like. And now here's your veterinarian wife who's been a traveling veterinarian for a year and a half.
I'm thinking, dude, I'm excited. I'm like, let's go. This is going to be so much fun.
Let's start a business.
Let's do this. And I said, "Why do you want to start your own business?" And she said, "I want to create the type of work environment where I want to go to work every day. And I want to surround myself with people with whom I want to work every day." And I said, "Now that I can help with, because that's team building and that's marketing and dreaming and vision planning. That's what I do as a high school teacher. Every year I get a new set of freshmen that come in, and then I mold and help shape them and help them discover their own strengths and develop a life plan so that 4 years later they can graduate and have some sort of an idea of how to be a functioning member of our society." That's exciting to me. I enjoy that. And so when we put her type A planning personality and my dreaming and vision and people and lifetime of entrepreneurship, family influence, and we put those two things together, that's what has created this building. People think about the building and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I bet it is easy to recruit here." I'm like, yeah, it's because we have a really great team. It has nothing to do with the building.
Correct.
I mean, it does have something to do with the building, but the reason that we were able to do what we did, we bought an existing practice, completely 180'd it, and grew it from one doctor and 3 team members to 3 doctors. And now we have 4 doctors. My 5th doctor starts in June, and we've done that in 6 years. I'm always afraid that something bad's going to happen and that God's going to humble me, right? So I try to make sure that I don't want to get a big head. I am proud of what we've done, but it's because there are people out there that gravitate towards high-functioning team members, like being a part of a high-functioning team. People want to win, and they want to know that they can contribute to the success, like that their work influences the success of the whatever they're a part of.
You attract exactly who you are and what you've become.
Yes.
So if you've built a good business and a good vet practice, you're going to attract good team members. If you have poor culture, it's not just the physical building itself. And what's funny is you and your brother were talking. We were having a quick conversation, and he was showing me on his phone how far away the old practice was. And he said, you both commented, because you've been in this new location for less than a year, and you said, "God, I don't know how we did any of this over there."
Right. It was not fun.
and so, but you had the right team.
Yep.
And so regardless of the actual physical building, having the right team on board and the right culture, I know this from my own experience and everything I just went through with insurance for the last 2 days. This is all we talked about is culture.
So I brought a couple of books to share with you. So anybody that's out there listening, I started a book club in 2020 called the Veterinary Leadership Book Club. It's a Facebook group. The first book we read was The Power of a Positive Team by John Gordon. And the reason that we started is because I require everyone to read this book, which is called The Energy Bus by John Gordon.
No energy vampires.
No energy vampires allowed. That's posted throughout here. So it's 10 rules to fuel your life, work, and team with positive energy. Dr. Catherine Foray down at University Vet Hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana, was the one that told me to read this book before we started our practice. And as soon as I read it, I knew that this type of concept was what we wanted to build our practice around. We require all applicants to read this book before they can come in for an in-person interview.
Wow.
And we send them the book. Like, I invite them to come take a tour. I give them a book. I'll mail it to them. All of our vet students that come and rotate through here, I'll mail them a book. You have to read this before your first day.
So vet tech
students, vet tech, CSR, kennel worker, high school intern, job shadow days they come here for 1 day. They have to read this book. It's
culture.
It is 100% non-negotiable. You will not get hired here if you don't read this book. And I pay for it. I even pay you for your time to read it.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, there's no strings attached, and it gives people an idea of what it's like to work here. If they read the Energy Bus and think it's the stupidest thing they've ever read, they're not going to like working here.
You won't have a seat on our bus.
Correct.
Just to expand on that for a second, and it's not you protecting the culture, it's they won't fit.
Correct.
They'll come here and they'll be miserable.
Right.
And the team that's here, it won't outwardly kick them off the bus. They just won't fit in.
Right. It'll be apparent that they want to get off. Yeah.
The bus.
Yeah. And I posted this on an owners group. Now, I am blessed to be in Middle Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
We're 30 miles south of Nashville. It's one of the fastest growing communities in our country. So my candidate pool is large. Okay. I still think that this works wherever you are.
Absolutely. 100%.
I posted online on an owners group. Somebody said that they had kept getting ghosted about people showing up for interviews.
Sure.
And I said, your system's broken. And I think it really kind of rubbed people the wrong way because that's really all I said.
Yeah.
It was too short. You can't, the nuances or whatever. They thought I was a jerk. I don't think I'm a jerk. But my point was, you're selecting for the wrong people. I have never in 6.5 years, knock on wood, have never had someone not show up for an in-person interview. It's because I know that by the time they've gotten to that point, I'm pretty sure I want to hire them. And I'm pretty sure they want the job because they've read the book. They've gone through our interview processes.
Yeah.
And so you put those.
A good hire pays for themselves.
Quickly.
A bad hire costs money.
Can you imagine? Like we talked about this in our quarterly meeting, all team meeting yesterday. We need to hire more support staff here, but I don't want to rush into it because a good hire is a blessing. A bad hire can wreck everything that we've worked so hard, to
and not
do.
We, you, your brother, and your wife. It's we as a team.
Our team, yeah,
everybody
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, question about where if you go in the Wayback Machine to when your wife was standing there, elbow on the door frame, and you're kicked back on the couch, and she says, "I want to open a practice," and you thought, "Heck yeah, finally, let's do
this,
do some business." What do you think if you weren't here, what different journey your wife would have been on trying to start a veterinary practice without a support of somebody?
I don't think she would do it. And I couldn't do it without her.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to be a veterinarian.
Yep.
I mean, I think I'm maybe smart enough. I'm not driven enough to study that much, but
sure.
But we're a good team. We've always been, we're polar opposites. When we did premarital counseling, we did all those Myers-Briggs tests and all that stuff. And the counselor goes, well, usually people are, couples are opposite in some areas and close in others. He goes, but you two are polar opposites in every area.
Every area.
He goes, so it'll either be one of those things about like opposites attract, or this is going to be a disaster. That's not what you want to hear your counselor say.
No,
but it is, it's a good match. And so where I am weak, I'm a dreamer. I'm a starter. I'm not a finisher. My wife is a finisher. And which makes sense, right? Most veterinarians are. They finished vet school. And so it doesn't hurt my feelings when she's like, I need you to get this done and I need it tomorrow. Okay. Like you said you were going to get this done this week. I need it done. I'm like, okay, I told you I'd have it done by Friday. It's not Friday yet.
Yeah.
But I don't consider her nagging. I consider her making sure that I don't forget because I'm quick to get distracted by other things. So at any rate, I think that me pushing her and telling her things like, quit. If you're not happy, quit. You'll be okay. What's the worst that can happen?
You could go back to being an associate at another practice.
Right.
Like that's
and now even when we built this, we're like, whoa, I don't know. This is really scary. We built this practice. It requires 4 doctors to be here to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. We built it. We only had 3 doctors. So that's a little scary. Like it was one of those field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. What if they don't?
Yeah.
And so I need her to tell me, Michael,
don't worry, we'll get a vet.
Because that's what I'm telling her. Like, it'll be fun. I mean, who wouldn't want to work with us? Like, we're awesome. This building is great. And she's like, but what if we don't? And I'm like, well, we'll go out of business. And she's like, that sounds pretty bad. And I'm like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, we're not going to be homeless, but I'll go back to teaching. You go be an associate veterinarian. Probably corporate will buy the building because who else is going to buy it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you'll get to still work in your building that you wanted. So we, like I said, we balance each other out.
And the reason I pose the question in that manner is in my role and what I do working with veterinarians, I see a lot of veterinarian entrepreneurs who are like your wife, who don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, but feel that they want to own a practice someday. And it's like,
what they're really telling you is that they're not happy with their environment.
Correct.
Right? She could have continued the journey. What she said was, I've worked in 25 hospitals. I haven't found the one that I want to retire from. So I think we can build it.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. What then she started doing was, for the next year and a half, while she was doing relief work, she started taking small business development classes at the Small Business Center here. She started going to webinars related to business. She worked on the business plan. I did not write the business plan. I just talked to her about different ideas. And I did research, market research, demographic studies. That was fun for me. The writing it down and with all the protocols and things that's what she did.
Sure.
So when you put those things together, it was a well thought out business plan. And we could have been functional as a one doctor practice. At the time where she was working and I was teaching, we were doing all right.
Yeah, there's a lot of successful one doc practices with 3 staff, and they're knocking down $1 million bucks. And
yeah. I mean, it's totally
30% revenue.
Absolutely. So their margins are what mine are, right? Like their profitability.
It's just scale.
Yeah, it's just a scale. So entrepreneur in me was like, why do we want to stop with 1 doctor? Let's go to 2, because then we have more flexibility in vacations.
Yeah.
And then when you get to 2 doctors, you start thinking, well, this is pretty easy.
Yeah, we did 2.
Wow, that was
rinse and repeat.
Well, let's just do a 3rd one. And then you add the 3rd one, you're like, well, now what? And then we started getting really crowded over there. And we had a team meeting. Everybody was a part of our decision as to whether we gave raises, raised prices, cut down demand, and stayed where we were, or do some of those things and work on building.
Make a big jump.
So what do y'all want to do? That's what I told him. I said, I don't care. Like, I'm having fun with this, or we can go big.
Yeah.
And my wife said, I can't imagine working in this building. She goes, I love the people. We did that. We put that part of our puzzle together, but this ain't the building I'm going to retire in. So then we started looking at what options were out there in our area, and we didn't find anything that would really fit. So we built from the ground up.
So you built a ground up. And just to kind of put a period on this thought is the reason I brought that up in that manner. I think a lot of veterinarians, from my experience, they wake up one day and they think they want to do it. It's not an evolutionary thing. It's like, or the opportunity presents itself. They're working in a practice and the veterinarian owner comes to them as an associate one day and says, all right, I'm done. Do you want to buy it? And it's not sometimes there's a grooming process of,
Right.
Okay, I identify you as my successor and here's the thing. But, I've run into a couple instances for practices that I actually work with where the owner just kind of walked in one day and said, all right, I think I'm done. Do you want to buy it? And
Right.
then now I have to instantly overnight become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Where that decision happens. And they don't have a Michael waiting in the wings to say, I have a genetic family history of entrepreneurship. Yeah, let's do this. And they're oftentimes on their own trying to develop a business plan and do all these things. And I've said this to a few people. I haven't ever said it on the podcast, so I'm going to drop this here, where I think veterinarians wind up being accidental entrepreneurs.
Sure. Yeah.
They go to school to be a veterinarian. They don't go to school for business.
No.
And they don't generally have that entrepreneurial spirit. They're a different Myers-Briggs personality, but then they wind up managing a team and owning a practice and profit and loss statements.
And a lot of them aren't very good at it. A lot of people, that's not specific to veterinarians.
No, a lot of people are bad people.
A lot of people are not good people managers. I think, again, my history as a school teacher uniquely prepared me for owning a veterinary hospital.
Yeah.
My students are like my team. The parents are like the pet owners, right? Kind of the admin and the government bureaucracy that I had to deal with as a teacher. Same thing with vet med. We still got the same government, giving me all these things to do. So the turnover, I actually enjoy hiring process. And when people
But you have a hiring process.
We have a process. There is definitely a process.
You have to read a book. You have to apply. There's a process to it. It's not.
And I'm not the only one doing it. Like, our whole team is involved in that. But the fact about like turnover doesn't bother me. Staffing is not what some of it's what keeps me up at night. But it's what I'm really struggling is like, which of these awesome people do I hire? And which one do I pass
Hold on
on?
just a second, Michael. I would like all the listeners out there to listen to what he just said. He's across the street from an Amazon fulfillment center to give you an idea of how up and coming this area is. But what he just said was, which of these awesome people do I want to hire? But a lot of that's process, and you have some big process on the back end. Part of that was your quarterly meeting yesterday.
Correct.
Which is EOS.
Mm-hmm.
And Traction and Gino Wickman and this whole back end thing. And so for our listeners who don't know what EOS is, and what traction is. What is that in kind of a minute and a half?
So EOS in a minute and a half, I would tell you there's a book called What the Heck is EOS? You should buy that on Amazon and listen to it right away. So traction, this is a result of the Veterinary Leadership Book Club. One of the other moderators in the group with me, she would always talk about EOS. I got it, my EOS retreat. We have an EOS meeting. I got this on the EOS. And I literally typed out, I have a Facebook message where I said, what the heck is EOS? You are always talking about it. And she goes, well, you should check out this book. It's called What the Heck is EOS? EOS is a book. It stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's basically geared for companies that have between 10 and 250 or 500. I don't even remember. We're not there yet. So let's say 250, 500 employees. And it's a way to systemize your business so that you're working, like you were talking about, working on your business rather than just in it. Here, everybody that works in this business is working on the business. So every single one of our 21 people have quarterly rocks that they're working on. And these are things that take them multiple weeks in order to accomplish. And when they're finished, we have a product that will help us as a company meet our yearly goals. Yep.
And so I have a vision traction organizer.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
And we were just talking about this yesterday in my insurance group. And so it's really a process of setting a vision, having a mission statement, having core values, and then building your vision long-term of what you're wanting to do, and then breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and chunks that the team is all on board with collectively. And it's not, Bill or Michael's telling me I have to do this at our business. It's that, hey, we're in this together. We're a collective team.
Right.
And these are the things that we each need to work on individually to accomplish the greater goal.
Yesterday, everybody had to stand up in front of everybody. It was an all-team meeting. And they had to say, Mike, we pulled up their quarterly rocks, and they had to report whether they were finished or not. Now, they got a little bit of grace period because we have 2 weeks left, but we had spring break next week. So
you mentioned that to Stephen. Hey, he's got 2 weeks.
He's got 2 weeks left. That's right. And so they had to say whether they were on track to finish in 2 weeks or if they were finished. And they're accountable to the team. Part of what they had to report on.
That's another interesting component. They're not accountable to you as the owner.
Oh, yeah.
They're accountable to the team, which is way more powerful.
Yep. They're accountable to the meeting, actually, is what so they know that they're going to have to stand up and report. Just like I told you, if something is due on Friday, I'm going to do it Thursday night. That's just how I work. And that has so far not bit me in the butt. I'm 44 years old. I figured it out, how to manage myself in that way. So you'll see a lot of fury of activity right before the meeting to get things done, but they're getting done. They're done, so that works. And these quarterly rocks, every single person knows, and what they had to report on was how their rock, what it related to on our 5 goals that we had for this year. Wow. And our goals were to increase compliance, dental compliance, and heartworm prevention by 10%, both of those things. We talked about patient safety. And so we're monitoring more patient safety things. It's just a focus on patient safety, fear-free education.
And you're a big fear-free practice.
We're a fear-free certified practice.
Yeah. I mean, you're all in on it.
Yep. All 100%. And the last thing was our 5th one that we're working on goal this year is our revenue goal. And everybody you could go down today and everybody on our team can tell you what our revenue goal is for the year. I share that with everybody. We talked about our average client transaction, our average patient transaction, our daily average, how many days we've worked this quarter. And if we continue that out for the rest of the year at the same average, will we make our goal? The answer was no.
Oh, we better pick up the pace.
That's right. So we got to add a doctor. We're adding a doctor this year. That was part of our plan, right? So, but we were able to share. We were only $30,000 off of our yearly goal. And we were closed for 2 days for snow, and also we onboarded new people, so our efficiencies were down. We talked all about this
in a new building,
in a brand new building
that you're trying to work all the bugs out,
and spending way too much money, like buying stuff that just so
setting up podcast studios.
That's right. And so we're like, it's going to stabilize. I'm not worried. And that's what I told them. It was awesome. Like they get a green check mark or red X's, right? And it was okay. I was like, I feel so good about where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Because the numbers show that we are doing great things. Your reporting showed that we're at 95% completion on our rocks with 2 weeks to go. We're doing great. Here's who's interviewing right now. Here's what we're planning is.
How many vet practices do you think out there don't have even 20% of what you just described?
I don't know. worry too much about everybody else.
I know you don't worry about everybody else, but from a mindset for
a lot. I mean, a lot don't, just based on what I read online. Yeah. There's a lot. I'm like, man, that seems so second nature. But they're figuring it out for the first time. They, like you said, they don't have a me.
But here's an important thing for the listeners though, because I just went through 2 days of this. We have a hot seat where I had to sit there for an hour and lay out my biggest hurdle, opportunity, or challenge. And it was 12 other insurance agency owners, and you lay that out, and then they tell you what they would do in that situation. That help you.
I would love to be a part of. It's hard to find a group of veterinary offices that are running like this.
Yeah.
And so that is hard. Now, and I know there's some groups out there, you mentioned some of them, we tried to join them and they wouldn't let me join because I wasn't a veterinarian. And I said, well, forget you.
Yeah.
And so then they changed their mind. I'm like, nope, too late.
But what's interesting is, and this is the encouragement is, you don't have to start with everything in there. You didn't start with EOS. And you didn't start with the energy bus.
Oh, right. Well, we started with the energy bus, but the practice, like from day one, we were around that. But traction didn't happen with us until 2021. And so, and this is, if anybody out there is a member of VGP, which is a group, they provide you practice coaches that run, they call it pathway planning.
Okay.
And it's based on Gino Wickman's book, and Gino, with his blessing, they were going to rewrite the book together, like the E-Myth, revisited. But Gino was like,
E-Myth Insurance.
Yeah,
I've read that a couple times.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have E-Myth Insurance. I've read that a few times.
Apparently, Gino was like, you can just use the concepts, just give us credit. So,
yeah.
But there are practices out there. Like I said, in the Minneapolis Veterinary Surgery Referral Center, that's who told me about it. And there are practices out there that I can bounce ideas off that I know they're running on EOS, and it's a shared language. For sure.
Running with a pack is so much easier than running by yourself.
And it's a lot more fun.
It is more fun.
You get to celebrate in each other's, victories. And it just, like I said, I don't have a scarcity mentality. Recently, I sent out resumes. We had too many applicants, and some of them were really, really good. And I was like, hey, do you mind would you like for me to forward your resume to the other practices that are in my managers group that meets here every other month? And they're like, yeah, thanks. And so I sent it out, and I had 2 emails back like, why are you doing this? I'm like, well, we got to keep good people at great practices.
Exactly.
And so if you remember on the email, my caveat was, I am going to reach out to this person when I'm hiring. And you know what I did? I was hiring. I reached out to her. She goes, I'm really enjoying where I'm at. Thanks for putting me over here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, awesome. Well, let me know if you ever change your mind. And
the law of reciprocity is always in effect.
Yeah.
If you give more than you expect to get in return, you're going to have more than you thought you had in the beginning.
When the day that we closed on buying our hospital on Wednesday, on Thursday we opened and we didn't have any inventory. That was hard. That was a hard day. A hard day. And I will never forget Kennard's Creekside Animal Hospital said, bring a box, come over here, we'll get you set up. And they just shared their inventory with us. We just wrote it on a piece of paper, what I owed them. And when our order showed up the next week, we took it back.
Sent it back over.
And I'll never forget, like, that's what we need to do for each other. Like, we can't be everybody's veterinarian. Your practice can't serve everybody in your community. So don't try to either. It's like, not everybody in your community is your ideal client. And so work together and spread that stress out. And
I mean, nothing against your building or what you have here, but somebody might come here and say, this is just too big and fancy for me. I need something smaller and more homey or whatever that,
our prices, we're not the cheapest place in town. Yeah.
And so we could probably talk for about 3 hours here on this podcast, but I'd like to chat just a few minutes about the practice itself and the building because I brought it up and a lot of thought and intention went, and I can tell getting the tour from Stephen, a lot of thought and intention went into this building and how you put things together for the team to be able to better serve your clients. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about serving your clients. So what went into the thought process moving from the practice where you were with a really great team to, all right, if we're going to build this from the ground up, what does that look like?
It started, I'm so glad that our path took us the way that we did. I'm glad that we didn't just build from the ground up to begin with. In 2018, I'm glad we bought an existing practice that we were able to get our feet under us there. because I would have put boarding and grooming in,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would have had a lobby with waiting rooms, just like every other vet practice does, right? Well, what went into this was that one thing that was really hard was that when we decided to build from the ground up, we were in a 1,700 square foot 1960 ranch style house. Then they started building these little warehouse units right down the road from us. They're 10 unit, 2,200 square foot in one big building. You can divide them up into 10 units. I went and put a deposit down for 2 of those units. So we were going to move into 4,400 square feet. They wouldn't let us put any windows in the building.
Well, that's not good.
They wouldn't let us put any skylights in the roof because the city of Murfreesboro had approved what they were building, and you would have to go back through planning, and they were like, we're not doing that. And so I said, well, that's not going to work because we love that old house has natural lighting everywhere. And
your new building has natural lighting everywhere.
That is a tip of the hat to the old building. The surgery suite was in the dining room with the big bay window.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Nunnery told me, if I don't have a window in surgery, I'm going to quit. And I said, well, Dr. Nunnery, how big do you want your window? Right. And then they wouldn't let me put a window in. I said, well, this isn't going to work because Dr. Nunnery needs a window in surgery. So we scrapped that idea, went back to the drawing board. We started talking with the bank. We identified a bank. We identified a lender. We identified an architect. And none of them would go first. What I mean by that is the bank wouldn't tell us how much money they were going to give us until we had plans. Well, the builder can't give us an estimate of what until they have plans.
How much money
the architect won't make the plans until they know what our budget is. And so what we ended up doing,
and then the insurance guy finds out at the very, very end.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Ask me how I know. Yeah. Okay, continue on.
So luckily we did have a good insurance guy. So we decided, Dr. Shirley and I pulled our personal money out and agreed on a price with the architect to rough sketch out a floor plan that met our minimum standards. And I told her what our minimums were. We wanted 10 exam rooms because we knew we were going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We want 10 exam rooms. We want a central pharmacy. We want a meeting space for 50 people. We want natural lighting. We want a double dental suite. We want a break room that's actually a break room for our team, not just like an afterthought with the laundry room.
Not a converted exam room.
Correct. And we wanted an outdoor exam space because during COVID, we had more exams on our covered patio outside than we did in the building.
Wow.
People loved it. Our team loved it. They got to go outside.
I mean, I drove up today and, I'd seen the practice on, I looked at it online. I drove up and I was like, there are little tiny patios on the whole front of this thing.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped and I had to, it actually stopped me, Michael. I stopped and looked at it and I thought, I have never seen this before in a vet practice.
Yeah, we have 10 exam rooms. 6 of them have outdoor patio seating. So you can go straight from the parking lot to your patio and from the patio into your exam room.
And because you're fear-free, everything happens in the exam room. The animal doesn't get transferred. The owner's there.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen was explaining this. So if you're a fear-free, certified practice, you kind of understand what we're talking about, but everything happens in the room. And I, as a pet owner, have never experienced that. I bring Louie in and they come get Louie and Louie leaves and then Louie comes back and he's pissed off.
You want to know why we don't, you want to know one of the main reasons we don't do that?
Why?
Is that I want you to value my team. And if they walk out of your sight and come back, this would happen if they stayed in the exam room and made you leave. I want you to see them take that 3-inch needle and stick it in the neck of your cat and draw out blood. I want you to go, oh my God, how did you do that? Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I want you to see what they're doing. And I want you to recognize them for the veterinary professionals that they are. It cuts down on complaints. Very few people complain about our prices. They see the value. They believe in the value that they're getting. Part of that is doing things right there with them. Also, an added benefit is that not removing the pet from the room decreases their fear, anxiety, and stress so much. And so if we do have to do something in the back, honestly, the people can just open their exam room and they can see the back.
Yeah. I was, getting the tour and I walked through and I was like, well, you can see in the pharmacy and I can see in the dental suite and you can see from the dental suite into the surgical suite and you can see. It is a fishbowl, but it's an intentional fishbowl. And it's interesting that you talked about seeing the value of the team. In the insurance world, a lot happens on the back end. I have to email the lender, I have to email the CPA, all these things. And I said, and I coach my team on this because, you say, hey, Bill, I got this email from my banker, and then you expect me to take care of it.
Right.
Well, every time I email your banker, I copy you on the email. And it might be 15 emails back and forth between the banker, but all you your original request was, hey, just take care of the banker, get the banker off my back, Bill. I got this email from the finance company on my piece of equipment I just bought.
Absolutely.
And I said, I coach my team every time we email or do something on our client's behalf, we need to copy them on the email so they see the value in what we're doing. Right. It took 15 emails to get this one thing taken care of for them. But then, not that any other insurance agent wouldn't have to make 15 emails or wouldn't have done it just as good as we would have, but they see the value in working with us because we're working on their behalf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want our clients to feel like they're partners in the veterinary care of their pets, and they're just like every good real partnership. You have support teams and auxiliary services that are a part of what makes everything happen. And that's where I want our clients to see the vet assistant, the CSRs, the doctor, the veterinary technician,
the whole experience.
Our clients,
not just waiting room, exam room, pet leaves, pet comes back, pay your bill. We'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. It needs to be more relationship than transactional. So,
well, people buy based on emotion and back it up with logic.
I love that. Yeah. We talked about that at our team meetings.
Did you?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Because I don't remember where I heard it, but maybe it was on your podcast. I don't remember, but I was like, yes, I love this. They support it with data. And, so it is imperative that we explain what we're doing and why we're doing it so that pet parents understand it. And then they're going to do it. I tell my team, I don't want you to feel like you're a salesperson. I want you to feel like you're an educator. If our clients know what we know, they're going to do what we recommend, because that's why we're recommending, is because it works.
Yeah.
Not because we're trying to make money. But what's good for the patient is good for the business.
Correct. At the end of the day.
100%.
Right. So you went in with a very intentional mindset about what you wanted to build. So you had a team built, and now you need a building to match the team.
Correct. So I said, finally, we have a building that matches the quality of care that our team has been providing since day one.
So the team provided quality of care, and then their hard work facilitated the purchase of the building.
There was one day we got a new client that found us on Google, got on our website, looked at it. We have a good website, familypethealth.com, if you want to check it out.
There it is.
You can also see our building. If you've heard us talk about the floor plan, our floor plan is available on our website for you. Just copy it. I don't care. If you need the building plans, I will expect you to pay for that.
Exactly.
But if you want to see what it is that's different about us, go to familypethealth.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, click on building plan, and you can see the floor plans.
And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so there was one day that a client was there. This was when we were still curbside. And he goes, am I at the right place? And they're like, what? He goes, this does not look like it matches your pictures. And they're like, oh, pictures are all inside. The inside's really nice. so we spent a lot of time on the, polishing up a turd, as they said, but it was we did the best we could with what we had.
Yeah.
And people liked it. He's still a client of ours. He goes, and he commented when we moved over, he was like, this is more like it.
Yeah, this is more like it. Yeah. So you've built a culture, you've built a great practice. I think, what's one thing, if you could go back and change, like what would you change? Either,
I would change our laundry room here.
The laundry room.
The vents go out the ceiling, and I would have put them out the back.
Out the back wall.
Yep, that's about it. I understand the premise of your question. It's hard for me to say that I would change anything, because that all of those things are what got us here.
Yep.
One thing that I would help everybody is read traction.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about owning a business,
so in your evolution, 2018, you bought the other practice. When did you implement traction in
2021?
So 4 years after.
Right. Basically in the middle of our story. We committed to it for 3 years. So this is our third year. I don't think that we would have been able to get the loan for this building had we not had.
So you invested in yourself.
Yeah.
And so I have a business coach in my coaching group, and I went part of our coaching. So, I am not the smartest guy in the room. I'm the first one to admit it, but success leaves clues. And if you follow successful people and, hey, what did you, and for the listeners out there, Michael gave you a clue. Hey, you can come look at our practice, show your architect the building plan. Now, if you want to buy it, you got to talk to the man and maybe get some donuts for the team.
Yeah, that's right.
I got the recipe for that. But success leaves, the point is success leaves clues, and the clues are out there. And so my business coach, I was sitting at his house 2 years ago at my one-to-one coaching session with him. And it was at the very beginning of the session. He said, Bill, have you heard of Beyonce? Have you heard of Beyonce, Michael?
I have heard of her.
And I'm not a fan either, or maybe, I don't know if you're a fan, but I'm not a
fan. No, I'm just kidding.
Not a fan, but I know who Beyonce is. And there's a quote in Beyonce. She goes, I don't often gamble, but there's one thing I'll always bet on. I'll always bet on me.
Yeah.
And so if you continue to invest in yourself, and it's what your wife did, Dr. Shirley, when she decided, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, she started investing in business classes and coaching herself up and doing things. And it's an evolutionary process, not a revolutionary process. It happens over time.
It's not all sunshines and rainbows either.
No.
And it is super stressful. It's been hard on our marriage. Like it not like that we're going towards divorce, but it's like, it's an added stress when you work with your spouse and own a business.
Yeah, turn that off at 8:00, please.
Correct. Yeah,
it's like I can't.
And so we find ourselves at the end of the day, like, I don't have anything left. I love you too. Good night. You know, like, and so that's hard. Like I'm the 5 love languages. I know you just learned about that book. We're all opposite on those things as well.
Yeah.
And so, it's just knowing those things is it makes it easier, but it's hard. It's not all sunshines and rainbows. It's not for the weak, the faint of heart. But man, is it fun? And the payoff is there eventually.
Yeah.
Like as we think about adding our 5th doctor, my wife and my daughter are going to be leaving to go on a vacation together, just a mommy-daughter trip.
Yeah.
Right. And that's because we're finally to the point where the business can survive without her or me in the building. She's been the least paid doctor on our team for a long time because we're trying to grow and invest.
Yeah, you're investing in the business, right?
Knowing that the payoff is there eventually. And also knowing that worst case scenario, we just go back to what we were doing 8 years ago. So it's not that big. It's pretty good life then too. So, so I would say if I could go back, I would love to go back with the knowledge that I have now.
Yep.
What changes would I make? I think that
would you invest in education in yourself and you're implementing some things earlier?
Yeah, it's so expensive.
It is.
And it's really, when you are that entrepreneur, like I'm always worried, like I have the money that I could get one of these EOS implementers.
So you're doing traction, but you don't,
we're self-implementing.
You're self-implementing. You don't have an implementer or integrator.
Yeah, because I'm too afraid to, I'm like, I'm still nervous about spending money. So
so for those listeners out there, to pay for the service where they come in and actually do the stuff for you, it is not.
It's like $4,000 to $10,000 a day.
Yeah, they come in for a day and they give you the full workout.
And sometimes I have been in some of these sessions where there have been consultants that are teaching, and I'm like, I could do a better job than that.
Yep.
And so
you got to know what you're paying for.
Yeah, and that's why you call. The one thing I would tell everybody: call the reference checks.
Yes.
Call people that have done it.
Yep.
That's how I met.
So our coaching group that I'm in, there's an application process. You have to be vetted. And then there's 4 mastermind groups, and you get placed based on your agency makeup and how you're going to integrate with the culture of the group.
Yeah.
And, it's a 5-figure investment before you talk about, for those of you familiar with Nashville, been in Nashville, was at the Embassy Suites. Very nice, not inexpensive to come stay. You got to fly down, you got to buy your food, you have to do the things. But those investments in myself as the leader of the organization, the ROI on that's almost immeasurable. And this is the other thing that he's my business coach, Mike Stromso, shout out for you, Mike, that he said he started the session. It was a picture of a flight attendant on an airline, and she had her life vest on. And he started the session with, you have to take care of yourself first. Put your life vest on first, put your oxygen mask on first before you have to help others. And I think, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, and especially veterinarians who are definitely more empathetic than I am, is they want to help others before they help themselves. And some of that helping yourself as a business owner is investing in yourself, whether it's doing traction without an implementer or whatever it might be. It's that investment in you to be a leader for your team.
Yeah. I think those are my people. The one, because they've challenged me, the books that we've read have really helped me a lot. And then just the team that I have here is so awesome.
Well, yeah. I mean, your brother's like this guy. Did he even tell you I was going to call you?
No, I think I got your email first, and I asked him, I'm like, what is this? And he goes, oh yeah, it's true. Cause
yeah, he sent me a LinkedIn message with your email address. Here, reach out to my brother. He's got a podcast. So I was like, and I'm in my coaching circle, I'm known as action packed. So I emailed you that Sunday night to say, hey, your brother told me to reach out to you. Let's get on a call. And we did. And I'm glad I'm here. Well, like I said, we could probably talk for another hour. It's probably going to be my longest podcast.
Sorry.
No, that, you know what? I think that there's a lot of information here that a lot of other veterinarians can use. And number one, you're our first veterinary practice interview. It's all been, other business people and bankers and attorneys and that sort of thing, real estate agents. And you're our first success story. And so you set a high bar for the Veterinary Blueprints podcast.
Well, I can give you some other people to call and talk to.
I would love to. Yeah. I'd love a list.
So there's some people out there that are doing it better than I am. And I watch them and
success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Like I said, right?
Dr. Ashley Andrews out in New Mexico, Arizona. I follow her. I creep on her stuff all the time. She's amazing. Like she's got tons of practices and she even had a daycare at her office for her team. That's somebody that's investing in their team.
Yeah.
Right? You just take care of your people and they'll take care of your business.
We're going to close with this. And this is, so I'm getting ready to come down. I thought, well, I'm coming to the practice. I should probably, buy something for the team. And, I'll buy donuts or bagels or something. And I reached out to Steven, or I reached out to you and you didn't pick up because you guys were in the middle of your EOS planning. Yeah. And I got a hold of Steven and he said, oh, we have a standing donut order at Donut Country down in Murfreesboro, 2 locations.
That's right.
And
best donuts in the world.
I had one on the way down in the car from there to here, and it was great. But what he did was he emailed me a list of donuts. And the important thing and the takeaway that I took from it was, off of this order, everyone on our team gets a donut that they like. Mm-hmm. And just think about that for a second. How much time does that actually take to have your team tell you what their favorite donut is? 5 seconds, 10 seconds, write that down and save it and I brought donuts. I'm not going to meet the team that's here, but they knew donuts were showing up from Donut Country.
Yes, they did.
They didn't care who was delivering them.
Yeah.
It's some insurance guy from Minnesota, funny northern accent. But those are the kind of big doors swing on little hinges. And those small things, small touches for your team, whether it's finding out what their favorite color is, when the time is right, you get to use those things and it matters.
And you had a recent podcast about the languages of learning and the 5 love languages. And people should go back and listen to that podcast because she talked about things that are free. They don't take a lot of money.
No.
Part of our onboarding process is that we have a Google form that we send them and it has that questionnaire. How do you please rank how you like to receive recognition? And is it public? Is it private? Is it a letter? Is it gifts? Is it something else? And so,
is it time or is it money?
PTO, more money. So we ask those things, and they rank it how they like it. We also ask them, like, what's your favorite work appropriate drink? What's your favorite snack? And we try to I will randomly do those things for people, and that just makes them feel like, oh, he really took the time to make this the way. Actually, I listened to your podcast, and I was listening to it while I was working on some things. And I actually took out a letter and wrote a thank you note to one of my team members. He comes in and cleans at night. His name is John. He does an amazing job. I don't always see him. So I just wrote him a letter. I mailed it to his house because of your podcast. I'm like, he's going to get that.
That's what I was going to say is handwritten thank you cards, but not left here, not given to the team, but mailing to their home where they get to open it in front of their spouse.
Yep.
And it means more.
And I know that will mean a lot to him because he is a gifts guy. Like he leaves little presents hidden through the office at night when he cleans and little acts of service like that. So it doesn't take
much, but you have to be intentional about
Correct.
it. It's intentionality.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, like I said, we could talk forever. We'll have some information in the show notes about Michael's podcast for veterinarians, just to kind of see what's out there.
Yeah, it's for you can share it. We don't brand it toward our office. So if you want to share the episodes with your clients about everything from chronic kidney disease to heartworm protection to pet insurance, they're really good episodes that are made for pet parents, and you can know that it's from a trusted veterinary source.
A fear-free certified trusted veterinary source, independently owned and operated here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
That's right. We're not trying to steal your clients.
They're not trying to steal your clients.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for the time, Michael. Thanks for the use of your awesome podcast studio. And it was awesome having you on this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints podcast.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Well, as always, remember to like, share, and review the podcast. It helps with all the algorithms out there on the internet. And we just hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints podcast.
Take care, everybody.